evening. I'd like to call to order the December 20th, 2023 regular meeting of the Hastings School Board. Clerk Beisel, could you please take attendance?
Director Zizek. Director Davis.
Present.
Director Malm.
Here.
Director Hadeen.
Here.
Director Dressley.
Here.
Director Beisel here, and Director Tate.
Here.
All right, terrific. Thank you. I would like to ask everybody to stand if you are able and remove your headwear. We'll repeat the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, the flag moved. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At this time, I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
So moved, Davis.
Second, Malm.
Motion Davis, second Malm to approve the agenda. Is there any discussion? Director Dressley?
I'd like to pull policy 213 out of the consent agenda.
So to be clear, it would be the first item for individual action?
Correct.
Okay. All right. I see you, Director Tate, 1 second. Just to remind ourselves, we've adopted a policy where one board member can ask for an item to remove from consent, and then it becomes the first item on the individual action. So this doesn't require a second motion. It's just a part of the first motion in the discussion. Director Tate.
I'd like to request that we pull 215 and 215.1 PR from the consent agenda as well.
Okay. Are you fine just for like ordered brain thinking if we make those the second items for individual action, 213 to 215 and then 215 PR? Do you anticipate those as two individual items? Okay. So we'll have remove from the consent agenda policy 213. That will become a single individual item for action. And then, oh, that's right, because PRs we don't approve. And then the second individual action item for tonight will be policy 215 and discussion with the associated 215.1 PR. Is there any further discussion with regard to the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. It makes me so happy to look out and see a full room. I know it's nice. I know a lot of people watch us online, either live or at a later time that's more accommodating to their schedule, but boy, it just gives great energy to have people energized about the Raider experience in the Hastings School District in person. So thank you very much. I appreciate you taking your time to either attend personally or to be watching us virtually or to be watching us at a later time. We appreciate your engagement with the civic process of our public schools. Our next item is a Raider Spotlight.
Minutes.
Did we skip minutes? I'm sorry. That is totally my error. Thank you very much for the correction. Jumped a little fast there, sorry. I would entertain a motion in a second to approve the minutes of the November 21st, 2023 regular board meeting and the December 6th, 2023 special board meeting.
So moved, Dressley.
Second, Davis.
Beisel.
To approve the minutes, is there any discussion in that regard? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. The motion carries unanimously. With that, we will then skip back forward. This is the pressure of going quickly tonight. Mostly it's about me. Operator error. We'll move forward to Raider Spotlight.
All right, just a couple. First and foremost, thank you for being here. And one of our spotlight areas is our Spark grants, so we'll hear more about that as we move forward. But we have a couple of acknowledgments for the Minnesota State High School League tonight. First, we have two recipients for the AAA Award, and they are Michaela Schuster and Noah Quigley, our recipients of the AAA Award, which means Academics, Athletics, and Arts. And it's a program to honor our high school seniors who have excelled in the classroom, on the athletic field, and in fine arts. Secondly, we have the Excel Award, and Sienna McCoy and Lucas Foss are recipients of the Excel Award, and this is Excellence in Community Education and Community Education and Leadership. And it's a unique program designed exclusively for high school juniors who are active in school activities, who show leadership qualities, and who work voluntarily in their community. So congratulations to them, and they will continue to move forward. There's another level if they are chosen to move forward. So congratulations to them. And then just an acknowledgement for our holiday concert last Saturday. Just phenomenal. And the fact that you do that twice is impressive. So just enjoyed that very much. Thanks.
All righty, thank you very much. Next on our agenda tonight is announcements and recognitions. And our first item, I believe, our mayor is sick, but may have sent some words in her absence.
Yes, so Mayor Fassbender was planning to be here tonight to acknowledge all of you and incoming board members as well. So she sent a statement that reads, Hastings School Board members and staff, I so wish I could have been there to thank you in person for your commitment to our children in our district. Brian, Becky, and Stephanie for your last 4 years, and Lisa for your last 12 years. Without your vision, leadership, and integrity, we could not have the team that brings such good or the accolades that our school district receives. Be proud of your accomplishments. Incoming board members, Jenny, Matt, Melissa, Phil, and we as the city look forward to working with you and partnering with or for the kids and teachers of this amazing Hastings community. The vision of what's the best for all. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you. Respectfully, Mayor Fassbender. Before I do Spark grants, recognition that the district has for our retirees, and the board is included in the recognition, is
4 years and you get to retire.
4 years and you get to retire, and you get a blanket. So thank you for your service, Lisa Hedin. Thank you for your service, Becky. There's one extra, it might be mine.
We could just roll it back up afterwards and tie the bow back on it and give it away later. Yes. Thank you so much.
All right, it's been a pleasure. Thank you. You trusted in me as your hire superintendent, so it's been a pleasure to work with you for these 6 months, which seem like 6 weeks. I don't know. It's gone really fast. So thank you. I appreciate it.
We want to make sure that we're recognizing our students and our staff. So I think we all appreciated the blankets and the recognition. We want to hear about our Spark grants and our What If grants. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to just do a little introduction to the Spark grants because it's changed over time. So the Hastings Public Schools Foundation has now transitioned to the St. Croix Valley Foundation. With this transition, Spark grants totaling $75,000 are what we had available to be able to give out. So we're super excited about that. And the criteria for the awarding Spark grants are guided by the definition for the acronym of Spark. S, standing for student benefit. P, professional support. A, addressed unmet need or a what if idea, innovation. R, for real applications. And K, K-12 appropriateness. And I'll just use this opportunity before we give out the grants to just acknowledge that we used to have a number of staff contributing to that, and now that that's transitioned, we don't have as many. So if you're ever looking for a charitable organization, this might be an option. So that's my plug for that. So with that, let's move on. Jen Subert and I will be giving those up. we go. All right, we have Amanda Wilson. This one is in the amount of $7,440. So Amanda Wilson. The next one is Cindy Benson, and the co-applicant is Jody Shellhammer for the amount of $667. Congratulations. Dave Davenport in the amount of $500.
I can just say a few words here. We can delete.
Yes,
Excellent.
yes. You're going to get a picture, and then we're going to do that.
Some information.
Let me also include the title of these as we move forward, so I apologize for those that I didn't. This one is Chad Otterness in the amount of $3,000 for reading books for special education. Chad. We have Heather Davis with co-applicants Luann Brown, Sandy Myshek, I even practiced that one, and Sarah Stradman in the amount of $900 for local published author Mary Blackwell visit. Next, we have Cindy Benson in the amount of $750 for crash course review in AP chemistry. I could probably use that. Next, Jim Jacobson, co-applicants Emily Chandler and Dwayne Oldham in the amount of $7,575 for It Takes a Village project. Next, we have Kelly Lewis in the amount of $1,437.50 for the middle school orchestra going to the Minnesota Orchestra Hall. Kelly? The next one is Kelsey Leontovich. And the co-applicants are Dana Miller, Maggie Baldwin, Tom Brenny, and Katie Matzik in the amount of $3,198.85, STEM and sensory-based learning. Congratulations. We have Joshua Colvin in the amount of $1,620 for neuroscience in the classroom. Next, we have Carrie Jager, co-applicants Anthony Letourneau, Rachel Hayter, Christy Bone, and Jackie Morrison in the amount of $3,120 for learning from author Adib Karam. Next, we have Ashley Hoffman, co-applicant Julia Massman in the amount of $1,600 for Spanish-free voluntary reading program. Chris Moore, co-applicants Luke Warren in the amount of $150 for Raider Excellence. Next, we have Serena Stocky, co-applicants Bethany Bagwell and Kate Battaglia in the amount of $9,000 for multi-sensory room. Next, Callie Jonas, co-applicants Catherine Bond for $11,000, making learning flexible for all. We have Natalie Cardell, co-applicants Christy Meister and Taylor Phillips in the amount of $2,000 for literature circles, reviving the love of reading. I love that. We have Bethany Bagwell in the amount of $1,233.24, building and advancing life skills. congrats to all of you. And we would like a few of you to speak to what your project is and how you came to the idea. And because of our mic situation, just come up to the table, and really want to give you the floor to tell us more about the work that you're doing. And this is what truly makes the difference for our students, is your desire to go above and beyond and do something special and different. So thank you for taking the extra step. We appreciate it. So with that, come up.
Always ahead of the curve, you know. Do we sit down, or do you want us to stand?
Yes.
Sit down.
Get the mic there.
Do you want to grab another chair? Sure. Yes. So the grant, it's pretty minimal amounts, $500, but it's huge for me. Every year we take a trip out to Delta. Alex, one of my former students, who's now, how old are you, Alex?
34.
34. Okay, 34. And he works at Delta, so he goes into Delta to do a tour every year around Delta, taking us to places where most people would not be able to get. So they've seen a whole selection of jobs. And he's come into school many times with career events and come to talk. I mean, we've got 2 kids this last year who've gone off to be pilots, others who've gone off to be technicians. There's a whole selection of jobs for every ability. And Alex gets us out there. But every year I'd be stressed trying to find $500 to get a bus. I've never had a dime from District 200 for a bus. I've always got it through grants or writing to people or Perkins, and so this is the first time ever that I've actually got a grant so early that I can order a bus, $500 to take these guys out. Who've got along here as well is Jax is along here as well. And Jax is a student now in Hastings High School who, via this guy, is now going to be working at Delta, hopefully in the future. He's signed up for the aviation course. And what they've done, Minneapolis Technical College, very smart, they've moved into the Delta building, the Delta hangar. So the college is actually working at the Delta hangar. So these kids, young men, go to school at the Delta hangar, and women, go to school at the Delta hangar. And that's where they go every day. And before too long, they'll be working next door to Alex here probably. So and I just wanted to bring Alex along. Did military 4 years, Alex? 6 years. 6 years in the military, then went in aviation, then went off and worked with Delta. And he's been great coming to support us all the time, has given his time freely, and it's a great ambassador for these students and a role model. Always available on the phone, anytime, email, whatever, always gets back to me and always gets back to students. And I know with Jax, he'll take him under his wing and look after him. So I don't know if you've got anything to say, Alex, just about...
Personally, I find the tour extremely important for kids, especially juniors and seniors. It kind of peels back the curtain, so to speak, on what we do there. Kind of demystifies the whole thing, opens up that there really is a road from Hastings that goes to the airport. And it's pretty easy to rake in 6 figures at the end of the year. So not a lot of our careers there require 4-year colleges. A lot of them don't even require 2-year courses. So it's a good way to pick yourself up by your bootstraps and be able to, make a life for your family and a career. And I've done that here, and I've kind of built my family in Hastings because of that. So I find the honor in serving Dav and his students and all those kids that are kind of tech-minded and wrenchy is what we like to call them. So if you've got a kid in that prospectus, please send them our direction. We would love to chit-chat with them and maybe get them out of the ASE program and into the A&P program. So thank you.
And if you folks want to come anytime, you're certainly welcome. But hop aboard the bus with us and feel free. I took 100 students out one time. It was like herding cats. I've broken it down to like 60 now, so we take about 60, but certainly you can come along.
100 was too much.
100 was too much, wasn't it? Yeah, that was too much. Yeah. And so lastly, you've got Jax here as a student. So he's decided, I'm not sure what you were thinking of doing before, Jax, but he's now looking at the aviation side of things. So just take us through that process, Jax. I know you're not prepared for this. I'll just put you on the spot here, but...
I always found that I like working my hands a lot more, but a lot of places especially mechanic-wise, don't pay too great. But then Delta pays great. It's a really calm atmosphere in there because you need to be precise with what you're doing. Yeah.
It's not dirty. It's not hot.
Yeah.
It's not. It's not cold. It's not hot. Yeah. Very comfortable. Anyway, if anybody has any questions, I'll be here. So, thank you.
I'm Luann Braun, and this is my coworker, Sandy Myshak. We are second grade at Pinecrest. We applied for the grant to get Mary Blackwell, an author from Northfield, to come visit our second grade classes. She's been there before, and she's amazing. She sparks the kids' interest. She brings items there to show them the whole process of publishing. But what's really important for our second graders is she shares with them that editing isn't a once and done thing, that you have to keep reading it, re-editing, and the kids love it. And actually, after she's left before, we've noticed that they just have this renewed interest in writing, and editing seems to go so much easier. It's like they all want to become authors then. So it's really a great thing, and we're lucky enough that it was generous for 3 years. So for 3 years, we're guaranteed to get her and have those classes get that experience. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi. So we are kindergarten teachers at Pinecrest Elementary, and we put in a grant for sensory and STEM-based learning. And so some of the bigger items on that were light boards for the students to use, as well as translucent shapes and letter tiles and things that they can do their hands-on learning. And the light board just kind of makes it more engaging and makes it more exciting for them, as well as some hands-on STEM activities for them to build and work on that cooperation in play as they are learning their skills, and that friendship and working on taking turns and working on building something together. So really building that play back into our learning while keeping the rigor of learning there for kindergarten. So thank you. Thank you.
Hi, so we're here on behalf of Hastings Reads, so I don't know if people are unfamiliar. Hastings Reads is a community one-book program, and typical one-book programs choose one author or one book to have come into a community, and it's a community-wide discussion-based thing. We're a little bit of overachievers, so we usually pick a high school or young adult novel, a middle school novel, as well as an elementary novel, and this funding will allow us to invite our young adult author, Abdi Koram, to come in and discuss his book, Darius the Great Is Not Okay. So he'll be able to come in and do a wonderful presentation to all of our entire high school. So he'll do a high school lyceum for us, and then an evening conversation at the Hastings Arts Center as well. So this is a really generous gift that allows us to bring literacy in and foster a really great experience for people to see themselves reflected in literature and that transformative power of storytelling. So thank you so much. We're very, very pleased. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Go to hastingsreads.com and check out events for February.
Hi, my name is Serena Stokey. I'm the LEAP teacher at the high school. Myself, along with my co-part and our occupational therapist, put in for this grant, and thank you for approving this and giving us this gift. It's amazing. What the grant will be used for is to create a sensory-friendly place for our students with significant needs to be able to re-regulate and have their sensory needs met to help them be more successful in their programming and in their classrooms. With the hustle and bustle of high school life, a lot of times it's easy to get overstimulated, and this will give them a space to utilize and re-regulate and get back to learning. So thank you.
Nice job.
Hello, Jim Jacobson, band director. My colleagues Dwayne Oldham and Emily Chandler submitted the It Takes a Village project, and the concept is it takes a village to raise a band. So this grant is going to enable us to bring in, well, it's multifaceted, but professional musicians on every instrument to be able to work with all of our 7th through 12th grade band students. over like almost 200 students. I wish 1,200. But specialist professional musicians as well as composers, conductors. We also have a professional brass quintet that's going to play with all of those students, and as well as with our wind ensemble, our top band that's playing at the State Music Convention. So thank you so much.
Hi, my name is Chad Otterness. I'm a special education teacher at Hastings High School, and my grant is to fund the idea of buying some reading books for a special education classroom. And I'd like to have a series of books so we have enough books for all the kids to read. So if we're reading chapter books, we have the resources available so that we can read together, go over the story elements, and just help those kids progress with their reading skills. And this grant will help us to fund and provide for those materials that we need to help them keep accelerating their skills. So with that, I thank you for the grant opportunity. I appreciate it greatly. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Amanda Wilson. This is my first year at Hastings, and the first year as the 18 to 22 STARS transition program teacher. STARS stands for Students of Transition Age Acquiring Relevant Skills, but we just call it STARS. But I applied for the grant for community and recreation access. A big part of the transition program is to get the kids out in the community and experience recreation and leisure activities, as well as part of that is health and wellness. So part of this grant will go towards getting all the students in the program next year YMCA memberships, so we can work on those health and fitness goals, and then also getting them out in the community, experience different activities around the Twin Cities as well. So, and I wouldn't be able to do this without support with my two PSAs that are here as well, and so thank you very much for approving this grant for us. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Ashley Hoffman, and I am one of the Spanish teachers at Hastings High School. My grant was for $1,600 to fund a free voluntary reading library in Spanish for our early and mid language level learners. Oftentimes the books that we have are children's books, which are not always the most engaging content for high school learners, but this money will allow us to buy books of higher, or topics of higher interest for our Spanish students to pick up and read during times when they have a little extra time in the classroom, and we hope to implement it on a daily basis as we get going. So I appreciate it. Good idea. Thank you.
Hello, I am Callie Jonas. I teach American literature up at the high school, and Christy is my co-teacher, and we applied for the grant for making learning flexible for all students. We have a wide variety of kids in our classroom of all different shapes and sizes and learning styles and abilities, and our desks that we have in the classroom are just not conducive to a positive learning environment. So with this grant, we are going to revamp the entire classroom to have more flexible seating to provide a more comfortable learning environment that will excite the kids with all the different activities and hands-on learning that we have. So we're really excited and very thankful for this opportunity. Thank you.
Looks like this one was left here, so I'll just take that one. Well, thank you. Chris Moore, one of the assistant principals at the high school. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to write these grants and the money that's given to us. This grant that's awarded here tonight to this program, Raider Excellence, is being used to catch kids doing good things and really looking at offsetting some printing costs so that we can make some nice banners for the kids to give out and and have students and departments recognize kids monthly on a monthly basis for those kids that typically fall through the cracks, might be typically not recognized, and we can start catching them do the right things and make that a public presentation so we have more and more kids asking, why are they getting this award? How can I get that award? What do I need to do? And really help boost the morale and the pride in the school. So thank you for the grant.
Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi, I'm Natalie Cardell. I teach English language arts at the high school. About 13 years ago, maybe, I introduced a concept called literature circles to English 10. Literature circles, kids get to choose their books, and they're in a group, so they choose. You have about 5 or 6 kids reading the same book, and so it's like a book club. And so they know that what date they have to finish the book by, but they decide like how much they're going to read for each of their discussions. And when I first introduced literature circles, it was amazing the reaction that the kids have. Like they started loving to read again. I think choosing the books, and they're young adult books written for high school age kids. Since then, our books have, some have disappeared, some have fallen apart, and many are outdated. Kids aren't really interested in the books that were written 13 years ago for high school kids. And it was time to revive and rejuvenate our Lit Circle choices. So I wrote a grant for reviving the love of reading, and hopefully with the money, we can rejuvenate and make some book choices for the kids that get them excited again. So thank you.
Nice job.
Thanks.
See, I pulled her into Hi, I'm Jody Shellhammer, and this is Cindy Benson, and the grant is for our AVID program, and we actually went old school with our grant. So in a time of technology and Chromebooks and so much of the learning happening in a digital platform, our grant is for like the OG board games. And so the collaborative work that can happen when we have our AVID students in the elective class just get together and play board games and talk and communicate, and maybe a little bit like the kindergarten stations where they learn collaborative play. I think that's good for our high schoolers too, to learn how to talk and communicate face to face and have fun together. So that relational capacity will happen thanks to this grant. So we appreciate it. Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right, I think this is the first time it's been done this way, and now I think it has to be done this way because I love hearing what you're doing, and I think it's important for our community to hear the work that's being done and all of your efforts. So thank you for being here. Congratulations, and thanks again for stepping up to do everything you can for our kids.
You are, of course, welcome to stay. I can appreciate why you may choose not to, given the fact that we're just days away from a big break and it's already getting a little bit later into the evening. I would like to reiterate for the broader community, and I know Dr. Ciampa touched on it briefly, while we appreciate the thank yous that feel like they're coming to the board, they're not coming to the board. These grants are being given out by a nonprofit organization that used to be the Hastings Public Schools Foundation and now has been restructured underneath St. Croix Foundation. It's still, the dollars that were in the one are now still set aside for Hastings work. They're just being run by a foundation with just maybe a little bit more administrative staff, and that they can be managed on a longer term level. But it's a nonprofit organization, which, as we all hear about the great what if thoughts and the unmet needs thoughts, is an opportunity that people could choose to make a donation towards. So while I appreciate this as an opportunity to share the stories of the grants with the community, I want to recognize that this is not the board giving these grants, it's that nonprofit. And we're excited about the opportunity to hear about it and to celebrate you on the largest scale possible. All right. Our next item for tonight, and it's not as exciting as it sounds. It says recognition awards. I feel like there's going to be more applauding and more recognition. What this is in our policy 430 staff recognition, we ask, or we don't ask, it's written in the policy that the parameters for that year's, so this year, the 23-24 school year, employee recognition awards be just presented in front of the board, just for informational purposes, and that we put it out in front of the public so that it's clear what awards are being given based on which year of service that a person will be at. I think the most important bullet is bullet number 2. Retiring employees will be recognized with a stadium blanket. So we saw this in action already. That was it. That was it in action. So this is given on an annual basis for an information purposes in the event for future boards, in the event that you're interested in modifying the amount or the years of service or whatever that might be, that would be done through a policy revision. Okay. We'll move on to our next action item, or our next item, excuse me, it's not for action. We did have a member of our community speak at the listening session. We had Mr. Sandkamp, who's a retired teacher and coach from the district, come and speak to the board about having the board consider changing back for the track program to a 2 head coach model, one for the girls team and one for the boys team. This is a practice that was changed in July of 2022. Where we moved to a single track head coach with multiple assistant coaches. There was no change in the number, but it was a change. This had been discussed with both Trent Hansen and Jason Cook, the current track coach. Mr. Sandkamp indicated that they would not, that at this time they don't support that change back, but that he does. And that he felt like the number of kids on the team this year was too many to manage with one head coach, and that in a comparison to the language he used was true team comparison, so that'd be teams and schools of similar size, as well as within our conference. There is only, per his evaluation, one other school, I would imagine it is, with a single head coach for the track program. And that was the single speaker for our listening session. With that, we're going to move on to reports and discussions, the first 2 of which belong to the board. It's going to take a minute to load. As you may recall, at the November 21st board meeting, there was a presentation by Perception Surveys, the results of student, parent, and employee survey. And I wanted to be acknowledged, the whole board wants it to be acknowledged, that we have been reflecting upon the results of this perception survey that was presented to us in November. We recognize that these results are valuable and are committed to continuing to learn about them. And that's not just the people currently sitting at the board table, but the board as a continuing entity is committed to continuing to learn about it. We will be using these results when making decisions on governance for the district with regard to budget and policy. And we also support the work that Dr. Champa and the district administrative team are doing to build action plans addressing immediate opportunities for growth and improvement based on the results of that survey. We wanted to make it clear that the board felt like that was a very valuable presentation and that we see it having a role going forward. Our next report for tonight, at the end of our meeting in November, we closed for a mid-year evaluation of Dr. Champa. As she indicated earlier, she's been here for 6 months. And at that closed meeting, so now we're at the next regular meeting following the closed meeting, so we'll be giving a summary. And at that closed meeting, The Hastings School Board completed a mid-year evaluation of Superintendent Champa. I note up here that I have the wrong. Oh, no, we closed it after the work session. That's right. I do have the right date up there. 6th of December, 2023. The Hastings School Board completed a mid-year evaluation of Superintendent Champa. The unanimous opinion is that Dr. Champa has had a very successful year to date. With regard to the 5 goals that were adopted by the board, and those are available in board book and in the minutes from the August meeting, Dr. Champa has achieved a rating of effective to highly effective, leaning strongly towards highly effective for all of the goals. It was determined in the course of our closed session with regard to the evaluation that there should be a clarification of the engaged learners goal number 1, that would be appropriate. And you can see halfway down the goal, the word directional is bolded. Previously, the goal read a full recommendation. Upon discussion, we felt that some clarification would be valuable, and that has been rewritten to be a directional representation will be presented to the school board, and this is with regard to the innovation teamwork that is happening at the secondary level. Okay? So that's a summary of our mid-year evaluation work with regard to Dr. Champa. And with that, our next series of reports, we turn over to the superintendent.
Just a couple of things. So in not last Raider update, but 2 weeks ago, just a couple of things to call out there. It spoke to our closure of schools. So if and when the weather ever changes and we have real Minnesota weather, just walking through my philosophy of what that looks like, what the timelines are, all of that is in that Raider update. There's also a calendar survey. So we will be meeting in calendar committee in January and just wanting to get the feedback from our parents and staff. What do you prefer? Where spring break is, what our winter break looks like. So that's out there if you have not yet taken that quick survey. It takes like 2 minutes. Please do. And then there's also some information on the results of that survey. So the survey data is out there as well. And Chair Hadeen spoke to the action plans that are in place at all of our buildings. And then just a follow-up from the polling place question. That polling place that the city is looking at is actually for 25-26. So we had more discussion on looking at Tilden as a polling place, but that's a little bit out there for 25-26. So with that, that's all I have.
All right, terrific. Thank you. I think the next couple items in the reports also kind of belong under your purview, the first of which is the cadence review.
So cadence of Raider responsibility, that is every one of our leadership staff members has a goal, actually 3 goals that are aligned to the strategic plan, in engaged learners, effective operations, and communication and collaboration. And so each month they reflect on where they are on those 3 goals. They reflect numerically and then a narrative. And I appreciate reading those every month. And sometimes we write goals and we put them on a shelf and we don't always reflect and come back to them, but they are certainly doing that. And you can see collectively, when we put all of our leadership goals together, this is the progress that's being made. And so tonight we have 2 who will be speaking to their goal. And I've asked them to do 1. I knew tonight was going to be a long meeting, so they're going to give you a brief update and overview of the goals that they chose and why.
Good evening, and thank you for inviting me to be here tonight. My name is Carrie Gore, and I'm the Community Education and Communications Director for Hastings Public Schools. I'm pleased to share with you my objective under Strategic Anchor of Communications and Collaboration. My goal is to strengthen our online presence and enhance communication with our community by launching a new website by June 30th, 2024. In the fast-paced world of web design, change is the only constant. Even in the 6 years since the last website update, the look and functionality of websites has changed dramatically. We hear our community's feedback and understand that our website needs to be more intuitive and simpler to navigate. Another significant change to website design is the shift towards a mobile-first approach.
Many users today are accessing our website through their mobile devices, and we need to embrace this change and adapt to meet the needs of our users. Lastly, what we've learned is that software companies have become a one-stop shop for many digital resources. Besides the website, companies now offer integrated school apps, newsletters, social media management, and emergency communication. This has proven to be quite efficient as it saves time by utilizing only one application for communication and streamlines all necessary tools into a single resource. We are at the beginning stages of this goal. We have researched and identified potential vendors and have matched up their offerings with our own criteria list. We've had a few demonstrations with them, and at this point, we are beginning to review their proposals. We have several phases in store for the next few months, including design phase, development and testing, user training, site launch, and post-launch feedback. I'm really excited about this goal, and I look forward to what we might design here for Hastings Public Schools, and hopefully I can answer any questions that you might have.
I'm going to do that thing where you ask a question that you already know the answer to, but I think it's important for people to understand. And you touched on it, this idea that a software shop is capable of providing multiple things. If you could just share a brief list of the number of services we receive, like we have our website, we have Peachjar, we have some other things, right, and that you would see that more consolidated, just to help people understand what the range of those communications are.
I think a good example of that is how we communicate out snow days, for example. So when that happens, there are so many things that need to happen from different applications. So we're sending information out through our website, posting it on there. We're posting it on Facebook. We're sending emails out through Infinite Campus. We're sending emails out through Google to our staff. So there's so many steps that need to happen where the new companies that we might work with, you just do one thing and it sends it out to all of those means of communication. So super efficient. And at this point, to get all of those bits and pieces pushed out for a weather day, it takes me up to 30 minutes, and people are eager to get that message.
Great example. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for allowing us this opportunity to share our goals. So my name is Jen Subert, Director of Finance and Operations, and Kathy Moen, the Director of HR. And we actually have a joint goal that we are working on together that centers around effective operations. So our goal is that in collaboration between the Finance Department and the Human Resources Department, we will guide and support a process to improve the flow of information between the departments of Human Resources, Payroll and Benefits, and accounting. So the reason why we chose this goal is that we have received some staff feedback that currently the necessary information is not flowing to the right people in always a timely manner. So we are looking at those inefficiencies with all parties involved, and we are hoping to improve that process for employees, supervisors, the payroll staff, the HR staff, and our accounting staff. The data or rationale is to improve the employee-employer relations, the department relations, and to provide accurate and timely payroll and leave reporting for all district employees.
So to give you an idea of some of the action steps that we have planned or have been working on, we have had our first meeting, so progress is coming slow, but we're meeting with the finance, the payroll department, the finance department, benefits is meeting with us, and we are all kind of coming together as a team and meeting to walk through every step of our process from the moment an employee gets hired all the way through the point where they're onboarded and the paperwork is flowing through for benefits and things. So we're breaking it down to everything we're doing now to try to look at ways that we can eliminate duplication of efforts. We've realized that we have what's called salary worksheets, where a supervisor will fill out the information for us to use as we hire, that then gets flowed through a process electronically. What we've learned is they're not the most user-friendly forms. Some people don't really know what they're supposed to put in some of the boxes. Some of the boxes require things that they don't even have. There's not the right thing to pick from the boxes. So we're working on restructuring those forms. We'll be creating new salary forms, streamlining our process, and then our intent is to do some work to provide some education and information for directors, supervisors, principals on what that new process would look like, and make sure everybody understands the process so that we can make sure things are flowing through in a more timely manner, and that don't have multiple people doing the same things over and over. The way we will know, we'll measure this goal is we will have held our meetings and gotten through the processes, looked at our structures and put new salary worksheets and processes and flows in place, and then given the training opportunities and the PD opportunities for the supervisors, the principals and things, so that they are informed and know what that process is so that we can make sure that it flows. Like I said, our progress has been a little slow. We intended to meet every 2 weeks. We've had one opportunity to meet at this point, but we got a long ways in one meeting. So we'll continue to do that with the hope of being done by the end of this fiscal year to have new processes in place for the start of next year. Questions?
In as much as this is a question, I think it's more of a comment, but we know from our staff that just there's a lot of frustrations because there's so many things that they're working on. I really applaud you for choosing this one because it's such a high-touch area for so many people. And I think that improving those processes will make it go much smoother. I suspect that although you were really talking about input metrics on measuring how you're doing on this goal, some of the output metrics may be our staff sense of, how is the district supporting me? How am I getting along? How are we doing together at a district level to serve the needs of buildings and individual staff members? So I suspect that the surveying that we're doing might be an indirect metric that would also be useful. Pardon me.
Are there any further questions or comments? All right. Director Tate.
I'll just say I'm a continuous improvement geek, as you both know, and I appreciate. I know how much work goes into doing something like this and looking at the whole process and the forms and all that kind of stuff when it's a big task, and appreciate you doing that.
All right, next we have adult education reviews. So I want to invite Carrie Gore and Susie Evans to come up.
Okay, me again. Again, thanks for having us here tonight. Our community education department believes in lifelong learning and supports the district's educational mission by providing learning opportunities for all ages. We are here tonight to share information about our adult education program, Great Rivers. Great Rivers Adult Education Consortium is the adult basic education program here in Hastings, and we collaborate with South Wash County Public Schools. We formed this consortium approximately 5 years ago with the goal of pooling our resources and doing more for the adult learners in our community. Our goal is to create a welcoming and supportive place for people to learn and make connections. We work with adults 17 and older to achieve their personal and educational goals. Susie Evans has been leading this charge since the formation of the consortium, and she and her team have done a fantastic job. Susie is here tonight to share a little bit more about Great Rivers and what we've been up to the last few years.
Thank you for having us. As you can see, this consortium, Carrie explained, our goal is to provide a welcoming and supportive place for people to learn and make connections. You have to be 17 or older and not currently enrolled in school. Our age range right now in our program is 17 to 81. We have a woman who is working on her GED. So you think kindergartners are wonderful to watch. That learning is also amazing to watch. So this is a picture of one of our ESL teachers, and I'll talk about ESL next, but just that's at Dakota County Parks here on an adventure and learning more about our community. Thank you, Carrie. As I said, we offer GED, high school equivalency testing. So you can get a K-12 diploma, you can get a GED, and now there's something called HiSET coming into the state, so we're piloting that. It's another form of a test that allows you to get your high school equivalency. It's a little bit different from the GED and focuses on multiple choice. However, the GED and HiSET are both higher level types of tests, so it's not easier to get your GED than to graduate K-12. That was a myth that was part of the draft to get people into the war, so that test has been revamped. So don't let anybody fool you on that. It is tricky. We also offer classes for people who are underemployed, undereducated, maybe struggling to retain their jobs, people who have English as a second or third or fourth language, and people who are employed, as you'll see some of our partners coming up, learning that specific English in the workplace so they may retain their jobs. And then we offer basic computer skills, Microsoft Office courses. So. This is the content when you say, how can you teach a class like that? These are all the pieces that are embedded in adult education, as well as we have citizenship prep, employability skills. There's a lot of talk from Governor Walz about, the pathway to healthcare, the pathway to IT. So we focus on partnering with MnSCU, Minnesota colleges, training programs, whatever we can do to be the bridge to people getting to that next place. That's what adult education can offer. These are our partners, and I'm excited. When we started many, many years ago, we had 3. And so this is a testament to the community. This is a testament to people at this table and in this room saying, what else can we do together? So we're very proud of the partners we have, focusing most in Hastings here. We have, and those slides will be coming up. But as you can read, everybody's engaged in this process. So. One of our best partners is Dakota County Jail here in town. What I love about our programming at the jail is that the focus is hope, and people are released back into our community. So while they are incarcerated, if they are taking us up on the offer of education, they are getting their GED, they are getting some employability skills, financial literacy, pieces like that. So even if their next journey is either back to the community or onto prison, these skills are following them. So we have K-12 teachers who work with us, who teach all day in one of our schools, and then they're at the jail until 9 at night because they believe in the power of education. So we're there 3 nights a week, and we're there all day Friday. So it's a great partner. And the hope that you get when you see people turning on that switch saying, I think when I failed in 10th grade and I dropped out, now I have a chance to learn, that's pretty exciting too. We just started a partnership with Rise Up Recovery here in Hastings, so those that are attending their programming are also getting classes like coping with anger, parenting, workplace skills, and we're partnering with Dakota County Libraries for that as well. So we're excited about that partnership. Intech Plastics, we programmed there for the past few years, and we are revamping that program with them. They have a large population of the Karen people who are working there, so we're creating programming tailored to Intech and their workplace manufacturing needs, so that workplace vocabulary, the safety, security pieces, all of that, people are already employed and they want them to stay, and they want them to become leaders in their company. So that's what we can do, is go in and create that specified content for them, and it's great to see people keeping their jobs, and our community thrives, so we all win. This is just another piece about we have an official testing center here in town at Tilden, and we have one in Cottage Grove as well. The part that we're partnering with Hastings High School right now is students may say, and there might be a principal here that could tell me about this, say, I'm just going to drop out and get my GED. And we'll say, hold on there a second. Let's give you some tests to say, are you ready to do that? With COVID, with all of the mental health, the struggle, the credit deficient students we've had, GED may be a pathway for someone to move on, or it may be, let's finish those 5 credits at your high school, stay in school, and graduate. So the GED is a route for some, and the way that we partner with the schools is when a counselor or a principal calls and said, this kid's thinking about dropping out, what other information can you give to us? That's where we're partnering here in Hastings. And same thing, we have a credit recovery piece, so that's where we get our 17 to 81-year-old people who are striving to finish those courses. So it's an exciting place. We have 20 to 30 adults at night coming to our programming, trying to finish that diploma. And this is just one of the examples of our community partnering. This is one of our classes at Tilden in the morning. We have classes here 4 mornings a week, and then 2 nights a week for those who have English as a second, third, or fourth language. This was a pretty fun day to learn about plants, learn about our community, learn about what our parks are able to do. And this was the first day everybody learned about the magic of a s'more, because that was very new to them. So that was exciting. I heard a lot about the s'mores. I did not get one, so it was exciting. And part of our program is state and federally funded by grants, and so we also write additional grants, just like your Spark recipients here. When you want to do more, you dig for the money, right? So we have a grant through DEED called the IELC, and this is giving adults workplace job opportunities. So we have a little coffee shop in our Cottage Grove location where our ESL students are there getting on-the-job training, digital literacy, and then they're being employed in our school district. So stay tuned, HR director. So coming soon to you. That's our goal. And for everybody here too, just like the plug for Hastings Reads, what can we do together? If you know someone who could benefit from education, if you want to volunteer, this is a pretty magical place. I don't want it to be a secret. This is a great opportunity for you to do some volunteering, or if someone comes to you and says, my neighbor's grandkid didn't graduate, what should we do? Find us. Find Carrie or find myself. But that's our hope. Thank you.
I just want to say thank you for taking the time to come and speak, and to know that this is being broadcast and it's being recorded and saved, because I think this is a hidden gem. It's a hidden gem for South Washington County schools, and it's a hidden gem for Hastings schools. We talk a lot about K-12 education, and we occasionally get into pre-K conversations, and we think about, how does that relate around the world's best workforce? That this is such a strong attribute of our district and a piece of that stronger community that it shouldn't be a secret. And the more that we can tell this story, and the more that we can reach people who just might not even be aware that this is an opportunity, this might be the thing that gets them promoted at their job and allows them to be a leader in their position, and then puts them in a financial position where they're more capable and more resilient. So thank you for taking the time to come in and speak to us tonight.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you. All right, next up, we have State of the Hastings School District, and this is highlights. So a typical State of the District presentation would include a lot on enrollment, finances, all of that. We have truth and taxation tonight, and we've just been looking at the revised budget. This really has some of the highlights. So the big things that we are working on right now, in addition to many other things. So if it's not noted, it's likely going on, but I wanted to point out some of those. So just an overview of our buildings. And then just the landscape of our boundaries. And so 170 square miles is what makes up the Hastings School District boundaries, serving approximately a little over 4,000 students in grades K through 12. I'll look at our sites again. Our strategic plan, as you've heard from some of the directors speaking tonight, everything we do, we really align back to where we are in our strategic plan. And I would say that's changed over time. Years ago, strategic plans were very comprehensive. They had a lot on them. Then they went on a shelf, and many times people didn't always know what was on the shelf anymore. And so I would say this document is definitely alive and well in Hastings. And so mentioned earlier, my mid-year review, so it's 116 days, and almost everyone in the district would say they probably know some of my favorite words and phrases, and they are alignment, working together, and moving in the same direction. And I love what former Superintendent Ken LaCroix used to say, is all of our areas are like a spoke, and we can't function if we don't have all of the spokes in place and valued and a part of our team. And so the wagon, now I look like I'm really old showing that kind of wagon, but what happens if we don't have things, we really can't get that momentum and moving in a positive direction. So academic progress is the first area, and this is aligned to the strategic vision, focused on achievement and engagement in all we do. It's aligned to our strategic anchor, engaged learners, and in our family and staff survey, we had two areas here. The number 2 thing that came back from our families and staff was recruit and retain high quality staff, and number 5 focus area was career and technical education. And so 2 of the big areas that we have in this going on right now are the READ Act and our innovation team. And so the READ Act, this is our November to January action plan. And so in August, the state of Minnesota recognized 3 separate professional development opportunities that all districts in the state of Minnesota will participate in one of the 3. So what we've done here in Hastings is all of our staff have watched those videos, and we've come together to talk about how they value and may perceive that moving forward. There are not contracts in place yet with the state of Minnesota, so we are not ready to move forward on the exact model yet. And then next, we have a big date coming up, which is January 2nd. So the Minnesota Department of Education will be releasing 5 approved curriculums that will be used in our elementary schools. So we're trying to get ahead of that game a little bit too. And so using Ed Reports, we are previewing all of the curriculums that are meeting standards and are aligned, and they are all green. So in that system, they're looked at as green or partially meeting, and so we're only looking at all green, so that as soon as that list is published, we are ready to bring in our staff and look specifically at those. So we have all the materials on site already and are walking through that. Again, we know there's not enough dollars to support all districts in the state, so there's some urgency there. And there's also urgency in getting all of our materials so that we can be up and running for the 24-25 school year. So that's where we are on that plan of action. And next, we're working with our innovation team. And I know this has been, you've heard this terminology for a while. And so really put together what does it look like and what are we doing with this work. And so to start with, the other word that might come to mind with some of the things I say is, where's the action plan? So I'm all about action plans and wanting to move forward. But really, how do we honor and review the prior work that these committees have done? And what are the guiding principles and needs that they've established? What's the timeline? Really wanting our district to be competitive in the offerings that we have. We'd like to be a destination district. We want to be aligned with the middle school at the high school. Common planning, honoring all our students, and we're really moving to language that's each and every. So how do we honor each and every student? Looking at Project Lead the Way, and then making sure that we're engaging with our industry and city partners. as we moved along, the next area there is strategic conversations. So when we come back in January, we will be meeting with each of our departments to talk about what is our reality, and then what is the vision of each of our departments, and then what is our current and or desired experiences for our students, and then who are the industry partners. In some of these areas, I'm not sure without your connections there that Delta might be somebody that we would often think of, but collectively, hopefully we can grow our partner base there. And then strategic conversations with our students. So starting with advisory, some inventory work of what it is our students are hoping to experience, and then student focus groups in our winter, spring of 24, and then going out and actually exploring these programs. So just yesterday, we had 16 of us toured Shakopee, and so Shakopee has 6 different academies of learning, and they initiated some of that work in 2014 was kind of the dream of doing that, and so they've been doing a lot of work, and now they have full academies, and so that was a great place to tour. And one thing that resonated with me, we did have the superintendent speak to us at the end, and a couple of years ago they made $7.5 million in budget cuts, and untouchable was their academies because of how much they value what they've been able to offer the students and the feedback that they get. So I thought that was powerful. Our middle school is going to Edina, and then another system that has a similar academy structure is Alexandria. And they are about the exact same size as we are. So we're curious at looking there as well. And then, as you mentioned in that first goal, the goal is to come back and say, what's the Hastings design and what's our phased implementation plan? Which the board will be really active in that as to what those parameters are and how do we phase some of this work. So that's what that looks like, and you can see where that's aligned to our core values of being student-centered, being innovative, making sure that we're listening to our students' voice and choice, and then those partnerships that will be critical to offering more experiences. Feel free to ask questions as I go. All right, next, and just additional strategies for improving our academic achievement and opportunities for each and every student. I would say working on just laser-focused strategies for our World's Best Workforce to include those 5 areas. And just last month, you had the World's Best Workforce presentation, which included the kindergarten readiness, reading at grade level, achievement gap, closing the achievement gap, college and career readiness, and then all students graduate. And so I will tell you that there have been follow-up conversations in all of those because we added a number of strategies this year, specifically in all students ready for school. And how do we partner with all of our childcare providers and others in the community. Continuing with that, additional strategies, expanding AVID, and Ms. Schellheimer was here earlier. She could speak to this much more eloquently than I can, but which is advancement via independent determination to the middle school, and then our diversity, equity, and inclusion framework, which really that equity and access, and I know that came up just last meeting, work session with field trips. What does that look like? So on all those levels, making sure that we break down as many barriers as we can for each and every student. Additional items or areas that we are working to continuously improve in this area is continued expansion and development of the MTSS, which is tiered systems of support throughout the district. We have submitted a grant for additional staffing and training to the tune of $254,000, so we're anxious to hear feedback on that. Our EL program, English Learner Program, we're reviewing that currently and determining the delivery model that will hopefully create the best success model for our students. And then intentional and aligned district-wide and building level staff development. So we have an upcoming district-wide staff development meeting in January. And then you heard tonight and are hearing often our cadence of responsibility and the goal alignment and reflection. Safety and security was another area that came up strongly in our survey, and it's also aligned to our strategic vision with a caring and inclusive culture for all, safe, accepting, and respectful schools. In our family and staff survey, this came up as the #1 focus area with safety and security. We've got a number of moving moving parts in this area as well. So Safe Routes to School Planning Grant with Minnesota Department of Transportation. So we're working with the Department of Transportation. 10 years ago, there was a middle school Safe Routes to School plan that was put in place. This time we're doing one for all buildings. So that will include all of our buildings, partnering with our city and just making sure that we've identified the safest routes. And then if there's some additional areas that maybe a flashing light would be helpful, and they'll also provide that for it's called a demonstration project to see if that may be helpful as well. So that's in process. Emergency management, Raptor is a current system that we use for our visitors coming into our building. That has some expansion to it that includes reunification and making sure, Director Gore spoke to making sure we're efficient in our operations, and that's an area that we're looking at. Alice is our emergency program that we use right now for alerting and making a determination as to when to evacuate, that type of thing. Cybersecurity, we're doing a lot of work in that area. Alert notification systems, that was also mentioned earlier, just looking again at how seamless we can be to enhance our safety and security. And then we have a camera expansion plan that I think you'll hear about more in just a few minutes. Student behavior and discipline also is a topic that has come up on our survey. It's also aligned to our strategic vision, a caring and inclusive culture for all, and our family and staff survey. This was the number 3 focus area. And a couple of things that we're doing in that area is we had submitted a non-exclusionary grant submission for $200,000. We did get notification today, and the first line is congratulations, but then it said that they will negotiate with us. So we're not quite sure yet what that means. So stay tuned. But we do think that's good news. And so we're excited to hopefully move forward on that. We have Catalyst training in the elementary started this year. We have quarterly building reviews. And the middle school is really looking at some creative scheduling and room arrangement opportunities and maybe changing schedules so we don't have as many students passing at the same time. So excited about some of those possibilities. And then community engagement and partnerships. So this is aligned to strategic anchor, communication and collaboration. And then core value number 7 is the partnership. And a couple of things that are coming soon in this area. In the new year, there will be a tour of gratitude just to go back to all the organizations that had the presentation about our tech levy and just say thank you. And then not this full presentation, but just an opportunity to talk about some of the good things that are happening in our schools and an opportunity to engage and answer any questions that our community might have. And then coming soon, and Director Gore mentioned this as well, we have a new district website that we will excitedly launch for the 24-25 school year, but there's a lot of work that goes into doing it right prior to that time. And then just continuing to build and foster the community relations. And those are a number of areas that we have strong relations right now and want to continue to build and foster additional ones. And then as we continue forward, just always working together with alignment for the continuous improvement. Any questions? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. We're making good progress, but we have a few more presentations to go. Next, we're just switching over to a different device to share on the screens in the room, and I would imagine they're being shared on the streaming service. And this is our 2023-2024 American Indian Plan Review. American Indian Education Plan is what it's listed on in your agenda.
All right, and we have joining us tonight, we have Keenan Humphrey and Samantha Hartley, and Darren Childs in the back. You're welcome to join up here.
We have no sofas in the front row.
Okay. All right. So do you want to just give a little background before we go through the plan? And you do need to hit the button.
Anin, Buju, Keenan Humphrey Indigenous Cause, and Tamigawa Indigenous Cause, Gasaga Squad Jamaica, and Tunchpa, Makwan Dudame, Gasaga Squad Jamaica, and Dano Kitawa. My name is Keenan Humphrey. My Ojibwe name is First One Standing. I am from the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe. I am from the Bear Clan, and I also work for the Leech Lake Band of Ojibwe in our education division, and I am the chairperson for the Native American Parent Advisory Committee.
Hello, good evening. I'm Samantha Hartley. I am the mother to Darren Childs. He's a senior here at the high school. I also graduated from Hastings. He is an enrolled member of the Prairie Island Indian community, and I am the vice chair.
All right, so we, if you're okay, I'm going to just go through the plan and then please add to it at the end with any additions or questions that you might have. So our American Indian plan is different from any other plan that we have. So when we do World's Best Workforce, all of those are completely generated by the district, and we may have collaborate and advisory on some of those. This one looks a little bit different. And so as we look at that, this just tells a little bit about this. So our local parent committee, as was just announced, is the Native American Parent Advisory Committee. However, when we look at the application, it's American Indian. So we're not just accidentally interchanging some of that, it's the official titles. And so Minnesota districts with 20 Native American students are eligible for funding, and that funding is determined by our parent committee. And so Minnesota districts with 20 are eligible. The base award is $40,000. And then for each additional student, there's an additional $500 generated. And so the parameters for our plan and budget dollars, allowable uses, there's quite the guideline document, are in accordance with Minnesota statutes 124D.74, subdivision 1, item number 6. So the plan, there's 6 different areas of the plan: support post-secondary preparation for our students, support the academic achievement of American Indian students, make curriculum relevant to the needs, interests, and cultural heritage of American Indian students, provide positive reinforcement of the self-image of American Indian pupils, develop intercultural awareness among pupils, parents, and staff, and supplement, not supplant, state and federal educational and co-curricular programs. And then again, all programs details must align to those statutes. So program guidance. So prior to the development and submission of this application, the district participated in a tribal consulting opportunity that Keenan Humphrey was at as well. And then we also scheduled time with the Minnesota Department of Education, and the application was developed as a collaborative effort and submitted by the deadline, maybe on the deadline of 11:30. And so then just a little bit about what this looks like. And I will say, basically, you're going to hear the same word over and over and over, or title. It was decided by the committee that really where they are right now, what they will get the most benefit from is having an American Indian culture coordinator. And so you'll hear that over and over. And so the support post-secondary, one of the priority focus areas is to hire a Native American cultural coordinator, and that is to ensure that our Native American students are prepared for their post-secondary options and experiences, and they will, in coordination with parents, provide guidance for each Native American student based on their desired high school plans, which may include college entrance applications, college entrance exam preparations, grant opportunities, financial aid, and support and direction for other related services and resources. The next area is support the academic achievement of American Indian pupils. And again, looking at that coordinator role, they will ensure students and families are aware and have access to all programs and supports throughout the district, build a relationship and trust to ensure a strong school-home partnership, review attendance patterns and trends and work to provide action-oriented plans for improvement, monitor assessment data and coursework, and participate in and advocate for multiple tiers of support. Oh, and the current data at the bottom there, our Native American students currently are identified at a rate 2.5 times greater than their white peers. Next, we have make curriculum relevant to the needs, interests, and cultural heritage of American Indian students. And so in these areas, we focused on fostering an environment where all students feel represented and welcome. Our Parent Advisory is working to inventory all the artifacts and materials throughout the district, and hopefully you'll speak to that at the end. And then a library of Native American books was purchased during the 22-23 school year for each of our buildings. Provide positive reinforcement of the self-image of American Indian students. And in this, we have foster an inclusive and welcoming environment where all students feel represented and welcome. And then there's an upcoming winter meet and greet to foster connections and a sense of community. And there's a feather ceremony that has been planned prior to graduation. Next, we have develop intercultural awareness among pupils, parents, and staff. And so during the 23-24 and 24-25 school years, the Hastings School District has committed to providing district-wide staff development and culturally responsive teaching. Through Minnesota TSS, Hastings is in the early stages of implementing family engagement activities as well as culturally appropriate and responsive interventions. We have artifact trunks that are currently being inventoried to ensure scope and sequence is aligned with Minnesota state standards, and that all of our artifacts are correctly identified. And then the attendance at the Minnesota Indian Education Association Conference in Hinckley, which will be in April. And finally, we have supplant state and federal educational and co-curricular programs. So to ensure compliance, the district sought our consultation, as mentioned earlier, to ensure that all of our practices and priorities, expenditures, everything is aligned with the Minnesota Department of Education and our local parent advisory committee. And the initiatives in areas 1 through 5 are aligned with the proposed budget and do not supplant the educational and co-curricular programs of Hastings Public Schools. And specific practices have also been put in place to improve the identification of our American Indian students also, which Samantha, you'll probably speak to that. So that's an overview of the plan. Anything you'd like to add to that?
Yes, so this was a long and arduous process in terms of coming up with ideas that our parents feel are needed for our students in the school district. And that's not just the high school level, it's pre-K all the way up through our early adult educations. And there are a lot of areas that we saw would benefit our students, and a lot of that kind of ties into our need for having a full-time cultural coordinator in the schools that is able to provide those intervention services because our students are not performing as well as the rest of the school population. And also just helping us advocate for our parent committee, getting our events out there on calendars. Dr. Champa did a really good job last month this month at our monthly meeting. We met with all the school administrators from all the elementary schools, the middle school and high school, so that we were all on the same page. They were able to hear our stories directly from our families' mouths. And I think that was very important for them to hear that and have those honest conversations, because our students kind of get lost and are buried, and our families are as well. So through our work and our connections, my network, both professionally and personally, and Dr. Champa has a lot of connections as well with Prairie Island. We've been able to kind of reinvigorate our committee because it wasn't as organized as it is right now. And we will be working very closely with our school board going forward as well. As for our plan, we do have kind of a targeted focus on our events coming up because it is so important in our Native communities to celebrate graduation, having our students just being in schools, because the school systems were not put in place for our American Indian people to succeed. It was meant to break us down and force us out of our culture and our ways. And that's something that has been talked a lot about in Canada, and we're hoping to see some more momentum being talked about that in the United States as well as the state of Minnesota. So our event in February will be for just like a community get-together at Tilden. We'll be having food. So we're really excited about that. And then in the springtime, we are having a feather honoring ceremony for our graduates this spring. It's something that we all felt was very important, not just because Samantha has a senior this year, but it is something that should have been done a long time ago, and we are very excited, and we're trying to make this as big as possible. So that's all I have.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that the February event is open to everybody. Everybody is welcome to come if you just want to come and learn and get to know. We just really want people to understand that this committee exists. So my son has been in the district since first grade, and I did not find out about this committee until last year, June 1st. I also found out that my child was identified as Caucasian on his school record still when I had fought every single year to have him identified as Native American. And so Dr. Champa did touch on the correct reporting and having children identified correctly on their school records. And it's just kind of disheartening because when you do ask, I think there's just a loss in communication as far as that goes. And so we're just really trying to get, our committee out there. We're going to start a social media presence so that we can get other families engaged and reach out to as many people as possible so they know that there are resources, if their kids are struggling, that we can help advocate for them as well. And the feather ceremony, I believe, is extremely important. A lot of your other schools in the Twin Cities do it. They have been doing it for quite so many years. And so I think it'll be great for Hastings to now be a part of that and set that precedent going forward that it is important and that we do see them and their heritage and we honor that. So I think that's great. And we do appreciate Dr. Champa and all of her efforts because she has been a great advocate and put a lot of time in. Yeah.
And that feather ceremony will also be open to the public as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to work with you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I did just want to jump off of the point that Dr. Champa made, which it has been a team. It's more than 0 minutes for parents to engage, right? It's a lot of minutes. And while we made the choice to run and serve on the board and Dr. Champa made the choice to work in the position that she's working in, we appreciate that each of you took that time as parents that are here tonight and the parents that have been involved in the past and going forward, because that's what we want to see is that continued parent engagement in the process. It's really exciting. So thank you very much for taking the time. Are there any questions from the board with regard to this plan? Oh, okay, thank you. All right, you can have a drink of water now. Yeah. With that, we'll move on to our next topic for tonight, which is the Building Construction Fund project update. And I imagine we'll see it shortly on our screens. Thank you. Director Subert.
Thank you. The Building Construction Fund accounts for the money the district received from the voter-approved bonds that were for school renovations and improvements. So there are no changes to the projects this month. No new projects have been added. Our overall available unallocated money right now is $186,000. We still do have many projects that are in process that we are working on getting to close out. And overall in the account, we have $3.5 million left out of the $49 million that we had originally received.
Are there any questions for Director Subert? Our next item for tonight is a truth in taxation presentation, and I believe that's also Director Subert. I think she'll be coming around to the front for this one. Thank you.
need the mouse. Can I use it? This one? All right. Hold on one second. Okay, so Tammy is going to help me out. If you will just, okay, so tonight I am going to start by covering the revised budget at a very high level. So we had a work session where we have worked through this before, and this entire document is also available on our website under the Finance Department. So what I will do is focus on the changes from the adopted budget to the revised, and then I'll move into truth and taxation. So Tammy, if you could help me by going to page 3 on there. One more, sorry. This one right here. And then if you could maybe just make it bigger so that people can see it. Okay, so here's a summary of the changes from our adopted budget. So the first thing that we always look at is the change in pupil units. So at the time of the adopted budget, we were projecting 4,468 adjusted pupil units. And with the revised, that's moving to 4,446. So it's a decrease of 22. And then compared to the prior year actual, it's a decrease of 35. So when that correlates into the revenue, it's a decrease of 196,000. All other revenues for the district in the unassigned are an addition of 40,317. And then there were some new funding sources for districts in fiscal year 24. So the student support personnel aid, the district receives $93,000. And that is for both the district and the intermediate that we're a part of. So the district receives $53,000 of that, and then the intermediate receives $40,000 of that. The next change is interest was increased by 200,000. So interest rates are starting to come back up, and we are earning interest. So I've increased that budget. And then the ESSER funds. So based on where our final spend was for the previous year, we had some additional ESSER funds left. So that was an increase of 331,000. And when I get to the expenditures, you'll see the exact offset. So the revenue increases, but then also the expenditures. The next one is the federal special ed. So there was a reduction of about $13,000 with that. So again, you'll see that direct offset in the expenditures because we have to reduce our expenditures that we can code to that. State special ed aid, that's an increase of $500,000. So there was a change in the calculation for special ed this year. And there's always a lag in kind of determining what your final special ed aid is. So with this revised budget, we are doing an increase of $500,000. Literacy incentive aid is another new funding source that districts received, and we are required to move that into a restricted account, so not in our unassigned. So that money will kind of be in its own savings account, and the district is planning to use that money in the next year to help implement the READ Act. So that's coming out of the unassigned for $216,000. And then the last change is the district has a Fund 11 account that is tied to Fund 1, and that's where a lot of our donations and carryover dollars go. And based on our audit last year, we are being required to move that into a restricted account. So again, so it has its own account. It will be shown separately. So that's coming out of our unassigned for $640,000. So then if we move on to the expenditures, a lot of these are going to be the offsets that you saw up in the revenues. So our federal programs, reducing by 13,000. Transportation is increasing by 619,000, and that's a combination of a few things, but we are seeing an increase in our special ed transportation as well as our special accommodation students. I also budgeted for a fuel clause charge. That's part of our contract, and then similar to how school district employees can file for unemployment in the summer, so can bus drivers drivers and bus aides now. And while those aren't our employees, as part of that contract, the bus company can pass those charges back to the district for our drivers and aides. The PSEO charges is increasing by $162,000, and that's related to a change in the agreement that we have with Inver Hills. So there's two different ways you can structure that agreement. One is where it's direct with MDE, and MDE will pay that college, but then the district has to claim those students at less than full time. And the other way is where we can pay directly to Inver Hills, but then we can claim the students at full time. So we're switching to where we can claim the students at full time, but that will increase what we pay to the college. And then overall district-wide budgets increasing $68,000 or $69,000, and that's for all the annual renewals throughout the district. The elections budget increasing $14,400 based on some of the actual expenditures and then some of the expenditures that we're still expecting. The legal fees increasing $75,000, and that was based on a 3-year average of legal fees. Miscellaneous finance budgets increasing $4,900, and then the ESSER funds, which again was offset up above in the revenues, increasing by $331,000. The subsequent year's expenditures, that's a required audit entry. So at the time the adopted budget was approved, we were overspending by $46,000. So we're required to record that in the prior year. And then the Fund 11 moving to the restricted, so we're pulling those expenditures out of the unassigned. And then the last one is our payroll and benefit annual budget calc, so that's a reduction of $444,000. And there's a FTE decrease in there of 1.21 FTE. There were some small things, but the big thing was there was a kindergarten teacher that we had budgeted for that we didn't end up needing based on the numbers. Kindergarten is always our hardest grade to project, so we had built that in at the time of the adopted budget. And then the other thing is all the salaries that are eligible to be coded to those federal COVID grants were moved there. New hires have been updated from estimates to actuals, and then all of our groups at this point are based on actuals, meaning all of our contracts are settled for this year, which is exciting. So our total expenditure budget increase overall was $130,000, whereas our revenues increased $97,000. So the overall change to the budget is a reduction of $33,000. So at the time of the adopted budget, we were overspending by $46,000. We are now overspending by $79,000. So, Tammy, if you would pull up Truth in Taxation now. So I'll move into, and I can take any questions if there's anything in the revised budget, but that will be an action item later.
Jen, just really fast, you mentioned the pass on during the course of the summer because of the new unemployment laws. Is that a full pass on to us 100%, or is it dependent on what type of summer business the bus company generates and how much work there is?
Yeah, so it'll depend on how many, just like us, how many of their employees file for unemployment, how much work they offer to their employees. So right now, and it's a little different for them, so they'll have an unemployment rate that it's not as direct as what we see. We're like a self-bill for unemployment. They are not. So there's some definite estimates built in there. Okay, so I will now move into the public hearing for the taxes that are payable in 2024. There we go. Now I got it to work, sorry. So Minnesota state law requires that districts hold a public meeting. It has to be between November 25th and December 28th. It has to be at 6 p.m. or later. It can be part of a regularly scheduled meeting. We will allow for public comment, and then the board can adopt the final levy at the same meeting. And then the presentation has to include the current year budget, which I've spoke a little bit about in the revised budget that will get approved tonight, but there's some additional information in this presentation, and then also talk about the proposed property tax levy. So the agenda for tonight, I'll provide a little bit of background information on school funding. I'll then talk about the district's budget, the district's proposed tax levy for the taxes payable in 2024, and then I'll turn it over to the board to open it up for public comment. So the Minnesota State Legislature is responsible for a uniform system of funding for school districts. They are taxed with that. And then as a result, funding is highly regulated. So there's not much that the district has input or control over. The state sets the formulas that determine the revenue that we receive. And most of that revenue is based on a specific amount per pupil. They also determine the tax policy for local schools and the maximum authorized property tax levy. So all of that is determined by Minnesota State Legislature. Districts can levy less, but not more than what's authorized by the state, unless it is approved by voters in November. And then the state also authorizes the school board to submit referendums for operating and capital needs to voters for approval, which Hastings did this year. So the basic general ed formula continues to lag inflation. So since 2002-2003, the state general ed revenue formula has not kept pace. For fiscal year 23-24, there was an increase of 4% or $275 over the previous year. And then for fiscal year 24-25, we already know that there'll be a 2% increase or $143 over the previous year. And then the per pupil allowance for fiscal year 24-25 of $7,281 would need to be increased by another $1,356 or 18.6% to have kept pace with inflation since 2002 to 2003. So this results in an allowance of $8,637. So on this next graph, you can kind of see the difference there. So the $1,356 is the gap. And for our district, based on our October 1 enrollment, that would amount to about $6 million more that we would receive in funding had the formula allowance kept pace with inflation. The other big funding impact for districts is the underfunding of special ed. So fiscal year 22, the cost of providing programs were underfunded statewide by about $712 million. And then even with the recent improvements in funding, by fiscal year 27, the cost of providing programs statewide will still be underfunded by about $408 million. So the district receives a cross-subsidy reduction aid, and in 22-23, that was at 6.4%. For 23-24, it moved to 44%, so that was quite an improvement. And then in 26-27, it's moving to 50%. But even with that, special ed is still underfunded. And then just a kind of a reminder that a change in the tax levy does not always determine a change in the district's budget. So the tax levy is based on many state-determined formulas plus the voter-approved referendums. And some increases in the tax levy are revenue neutral, being offset by reductions in state aid. And then the expenditure budget is limited by the state-set revenue formulas, the voter-approved levies, and the fund balance. And then an increase in school taxes does not always correlate to an equal increase in the budget. And that's just because there's a share between aid and levy that doesn't always equal. So there's different levy cycles between a school district in the city or the county. So the school district's budget year begins on July 1 each year. And then the 2024 taxes provide revenue for a school district for the 24-25 fiscal year. And then the budget for 24-25 would be adopted in June of 2024. Whereas for a city, their budget year begins January 1st, and their 2024 taxes provide revenue for their 2024 calendar year budget. So we're operating off of two different calendar years. And then the budget information, because the approval of school district budgets lags the certification of a tax levy by 6 months, state statute only requires that we present our current year budget. So we'll be looking at the revised budget for 23-24. And then the school district budgets are divided into separate funds based on the purpose of the revenue as required by law. So you can see all of the district funds on there, with the primary one being the general fund. This next one is a required district revenue and expenditure document that the district has to post in the local newspaper, and we had done that in November, but you can see on here our fiscal year 23 fund balances and then what that would be for the fiscal year 24. I'll go into some of the specific accounts now. So revenue by all funds. So our 23-24 budget is $77.9 million. And again, the biggest fund is the general fund, and that accounts for 84% of our overall. The debt service is the second largest fund. And then the other thing to note is if you ever are trying to tie this back to the revised budget, in truth and taxation, the self-funded dental and health are not included. The next slide here is our general fund revenue. So this just shows where we're getting our revenue from. So from the state, we're getting 69% of our revenue, and then the local is at 25%. As far as our object goes, so these are the object categories of where we're spending our money. So salaries and benefits is at 49.5%, and then employee benefits is at 21.9%. So overall, between salaries and benefits, it's 71.4% of our budget. The other thing to kind of note on this is because we're still spending out bond dollars, our capital expenditures are higher than you would see without those bond dollars. So that kind of skews some of the percentages. And then expenditures by program. So the primary categories here that are in the classroom, so regular instruction, the vocational ed, the special ed, instructional support, and pupil services accounts for over 78% of our budget. Again, the sites and buildings is going to be a little bit larger because right now we're spending some of those bond dollars yet. So then our payable 2024 property tax levy, we'll look a little bit at the determination of the levy, the reasons for the change. We'll compare the 23 to the 24, and then we'll look at the impact on taxpayers. So property tax background, every owner of taxable property pays property taxes to various taxing jurisdictions. So it could be the county, the city, the township, school district, or any special districts in which their property is located. And then each taxing jurisdiction sets their own tax levy, often based on limits in state law. And then the county will send out bills. They'll collect the taxes from the property owners, distribute the funds back to all the jurisdictions. This next slide is just a sample of a proposed tax bill that is mailed out to all property owners between November 11th and December 24th. And it will include a comparison to the prior year of their taxes by the jurisdiction and also by voter approved in other school district. And then it will also show the time and place of the public hearing. So then school district property taxes, each school district can levy taxes in over 40 different categories. The maximum levy amounts are calculated by MDE for each category and are set by state law or voter approval. And then the property tax process, there's some key steps in the process are going to be summarized on the next slide. And then any of these steps may affect the taxes on a parcel of property, but the district has control over only one of the 6 steps. So here's the 6 steps. And again, step number 5 is really the piece that the school district, so the school board adopts the proposed levy in September. After a public hearing, the board adopts the final levy in December. And the final levy, again, cannot exceed the proposed except for the voter approved. And then here's a little timeline. So September 8th, MD prepared and distributed the first draft of the levy limit reports. And then September 27th, the school board had approved the proposed levy. And then in mid-November, the county mailed out the tax statements. And now we're at December 20th, so this is our public hearing on the proposed levy. And then following the hearing, the school board will certify a final levy amount. So the overview of our proposed tax levy. So there's a tax increase from 2023 of $1.9 million or 10.4%. And that really goes back to the approved tech levy. And then I'll talk a little bit about the changes by category and the reasons on the upcoming slides. So this one is just a summary, but I can touch on some of the bigger amounts. So you can see in that general category, the voter-approved capital project referendum for $2 million is on there. There's a reduction of about $240,000 in other post-employment benefits. So as we have less employees qualifying for severance, that number will continue to decrease. And then overall in our debt service, there was an increase of $181,000, and that's for outstanding debt. And there's debt schedules that go with each one of those. So again, at the bottom, you can see the increase is $1,983,000 or 10.4%. This one is just a summary again. So this is the voter-approved capital project referendum for $2 million. The use of that will be technology costs. And that was a levy that was based on voter approval. And voter approval tax rate applied to the tax base. And then that was in November of 23. So factors that can impact an individual taxpayer's school taxes, changes in the value of their individual property, changes in the value of all property within the district, and then increases or decreases in the levy amount caused by changes in the state funding formula, local needs, voter-approved referendums, and other factors. And you can think of it as a big pie, and as a higher market value, like if somebody has a home with a higher market value, if that increases, they'll pay a bigger piece of that pie. Somebody with a lower market value increase will pay a smaller slice of that pie. But each property owner in the district will be paying towards that. And then if we look at the property valuation, so if we had two houses that are both valued at $100,000, they would each pay a total levy of $500, or I'm sorry, and the total levy is $500. They would each pay $250. So if the homes are of equal value, they pay the same amount. But if you look at where they're not at equal value, so the top house there is at $110,000, so they're going to pay $234,000. Where the bottom house is at $125,000, they're going to pay $266. So that's the impact of the property valuation. And next, we'll look at a 4-year school levy comparison. So we'll look at the examples in two different ways. One with no change to the property value, and then the second one with a 24.8% increase in the property value. And that increase is based on the research that Ehlers does for the district. And then actual changes in value may be more or less than this for any parcel property, and it's just intended to be a fair representation. The examples are going to be for properties within Hastings, and then the amounts for 2024 are preliminary estimates. The final amounts could change slightly, and I mentioned already, but this is prepared by Ehlers. So on this slide, you can see the last 4 years. And if we just take an example of a $300,000 house, so the taxes that they were payable in 21 would have been $1,174. 2024. If we move to taxes payable in 2022, it's $1,137. Taxes payable in 2023 would be $1,080. And then for taxes payable in 24, prior to the ballot question, it would have been $1,011. The approved tech levy is an additional $107, so that puts it at $1,118. So the tax change from 2021 to 2024 is $38, but keep in mind, this is with no change to the property value. So these next couple of slides are just the same information, just graphically. So I'm not going to cover those. But then this is the one that has the 24.8% change in the property value. So the first example there is a $200,000 home. Going back to 2021, it would have been $598. 2022, $595. 2023, $667. And then 2024 with the approved levy, the capital projects levy at $725. Lastly, there are a few state property tax refund and deferral programs. So there's the homestead credit refund, there's the special property tax refund, and there's a senior citizen property tax deferral program. And if anybody is interested in these, I would say they should contact their tax advisor because there are different criteria for each. So then the next steps would be that the board accepts public comment on the proposed levy, and then later on there would be an action item to certify it. And I can take questions if there are any, otherwise I can just turn it over to the board.
Yeah, I was going to say, let's see if there's any questions at the board table before we go. Okay. All right. Thank you, Director Subert. At this time, then, we'll open the microphone that's just been vacated for public comment with regard to the truth in taxation. Yeah, come on up. It's not a question and answer. It's a public hearing, so you could make a statement, but it's not. We're not able to engage in dialogue. Yeah, so we can get the slides up, but I would ask you to use the microphone because that's the way it gets picked up on the streaming.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for allowing the public comments. So this presentation is a little new to me, but I think just overall financials from the school board, from the community standpoint, is a very important issue, obviously, right? And I would disagree with some of what this is saying, which is, and I saw a public comment, the same thing, saying, well, the percentage isn't really going up that much. I mean, your taxes are going up. Like, we have a number here, 24% property value. I don't know where they got that number, but most property values have grown much more than 24% over the last few years. The other slide, if you go back here a little bit, it talks about inflation. So it's kind of saying, hey, we're not getting the funding from the state to keep up with inflation. So the question on that slide is, but does it also take into account the value, because property values are going up. So now the revenue from property values is also increasing. So does that include with that? I mean, that value in property is way outpacing inflation. So I think you have to be really careful on how you frame information. I've seen this forum do that in the past, where we say something like, well, because the auditors gave us a clean bill of health, we're doing great financially. Well, that's not necessarily what that means. What that means is your staff is doing a great job of tracking things. It doesn't necessarily mean we're doing great financially planning and executing on that plan. And so I want to thank the community, first of all, because I think a lot of the candidates that were elected do have some of that financial background. But I think that's something we got to keep in mind as we move forward. That is the role of the board, to really look at and dig into these numbers and ask the hard questions. And I just don't see that has happened in the past. But see if you see this, well, that's what that's saying as well. We haven't, the state influx hasn't kept up with inflation, but does that include the local influx? See, so we're framing the number that may give us a false story. And I've seen that in other, so some of the information's right, some of it paints a picture, but how you frame that information, I think, and this was really hard for someone to digest and come in and make a public comment. I don't know the other years that it was said it was allowed by law that was even not offered through this forum. Okay, well, we're not in compliance on some other things. So anyway, so what I would say is, and why, it's a separate topic, but there are some things I'd like to submit for policy changes as we move forward. But yeah, so I think what's important from the board is to realize their role, and you don't want to paint a necessarily un-rosy picture, but I think it's important to be very honest with the community, what's really going on, and start digging into those numbers as a role on the board. This isn't so much the staff or the school, but I think that's something for the future board members to keep in mind. I've seen those things. I've seen things misrepresented. So I just would ask that as board members, as the future board members, we start digging into those numbers and really understand the financial plan and those numbers.
I would point out that the purpose of this public hearing is in relationship to truth in taxation. This is not a general public comment period. So you're welcome to continue to comment with regard to truth in taxation, but it is imperative that you stay on the topic that this public hearing is for.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Well, I think this goes into truth in taxation. So understand how we're being taxed and what the financials are. That what I'm talking about is presentation of information in regards to financials. So when we talk about truth in taxation, for example, if we put up a balance sheet and we don't include short-term liabilities, and so that looks like it's 20 million, maybe that's actually a negative 10 if you do that balance sheet the way it should be. So what I'm saying is when you present information that could, if it's not being, it's up to me, it's up to the board as a rule to help us dig into these numbers. And so I do think that matters, because if you walk in here cold, there's a bunch of slides here that any CEO, any CFO is going to have a hard time making a good evaluation commenting on. So I think that's the kind of thing we need to work forward to start really looking at those plans and digging into them. And what I would also say, as far as the taxation, one thing I would look at too is there were a lot of people that did vote. I think the tech levy was fairly unique for this community where it was passed. So again, I think that plan of how we use that money and we responsibly make sure we're really looking into that. Doesn't mean we're not looking into it, but I just see a lot of, not a lot, but I do see some inconsistencies in what is being presented here with maybe a financial truth, right? So, and this is a case example of this, and maybe this is fun. Maybe this does include the local money, but showing this without the local money going up, it kind of, it gives to me a little bit of a dishonest picture, because really, if the local money is making up that gap, which it well could be, do you understand what I'm saying? Is this showing just the income from the state? Because if it's adjusting for inflation just from income from the state, that 25% and local money, those values, those property values are going up. They said 24%. I don't know where they got 24%. I think 24% can happen. Has happened in the week in the real estate market here over the last year, but they're going up 30, 40, 50%, and that would more than make up for that. So if you're not including that, then that's a little bit of a false picture, right? And I've seen other presentations where we said, hey, the administration 2 years ago said we're going to cut certain things, right?
Let's please keep the conversation to the topic at hand with truth and taxation, not previous presentations. Thank you.
Okay, well, this has slides on how you're expending money, right? So again, how we're expending that money, I think that's something to look at going forward. So on this one, I don't have anything more, but again, I think next time, hey, we're putting out a budget, we're gonna have a public comment. Those types of communications with the community, that would be a good thing. So.
Thank you. Is there any additional comment with regard to truth and taxation tonight? Okay. So then it just comes to an end. We don't need a further statement. Okay. Terrific, thank you. That's the completion of that item, the truth and taxation portion of tonight. Thank you, Director Tate. Next, we have a 917 update, and I just provided a summative statement, a bullet list of the actions that are being undertaken at 917 right now. I think the points of interest are always, to me, the overlapping characteristics of the policies that we're reviewing. I think both of our districts are on a pretty aggressive cycle with that regard, and jumping on a big piece of that. I think there's a couple really interesting things happening at 917. In partnership with the other 3 intermediate districts in Minnesota, there's work to build a apprenticeship program to assist paraprofessionals in moving from a paraprofessional position into a special education or EBD teaching position. And that's really an exciting opportunity that 917 is right on the front lines of. DCALS, which is the Dakota County Alternative Learning Center, is having notable success, measurable success with regard to completion of their first quarter. They have had a 25% increase in the number of students passing all classes, and they're anticipating 10 graduates by February. There's also some interesting work being done with regard to retention planning for staff, and I think there might be an opportunity for some lessons to be learned there. Hastings does have a long history of long-term staffing, but I think there's always opportunities for learning, and I can see that being a collaborative piece. Something I didn't include because I didn't hear it until this morning is that we are in a tentative agreement with the teachers union for 917, and so we may be in a position to know more about whether the details of that agreement and the adoption at 917 by mid-January. Their January meeting is currently scheduled, I believe it's for the 9th. So that's moving forward. And does anybody have any specific questions with regard to 917? They're also doing some interesting work with hiring international teachers to come in particular work with special education. I think just something interesting to watch, and we'll see how that works. That does include working with the teacher to receive Minnesota licensure and supporting their visa application. Be interesting. We could even see staff working for 917 yet this school year in that regard. So, hearing no questions, next we have our policy committee. The policy committee meeting is what it says on there. So I'll turn it over to Director Dressley.
Thank you. So I'm just going to briefly go over what we expected out of the policy committee this year when we started the year. And what we expected was to review 36 policies, which would have been a third of the district's policies. Instead, we reviewed 81 policies. Yes, absolutely. So there were 45 additional policies that required revisions due to changes made during the 2023 legislative session. The board this year adopted 64 policies, and there are still 17 currently in process. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody for your continued hard work and commitment to policy. So in December and November, the policy committee met twice. During the November meeting, the committee met with the Hastings Police Department regarding Policy 507, corporal punishment and prone restraints. The committee also met with the Director of Human Resources to review the 400 series policies. There were 8 policies reviewed, and in December's meeting, the committee met with the Director of Human Resources again and worked on a number of the 400 series policies. There were 9 policies reviewed that I will detail when we go through the readings. Future policy work. In January, the committee will continue reviewing the remaining 400 series policies and also begin the 500 series policies. The next policy committee meeting will be scheduled after the organizational meeting in January to give new committee members a chance to weigh in on what that schedule should look like. Does anybody have any questions before I start rolling into first and second readings? Okay. So first readings, the 300 series policies are new to the district. We kept them pretty similar to what MSBA model policies were. I'm not going to go into detail unless somebody's got questions about the individual policies. Does anybody got questions? Okay.
So in reference to the 300 series policies, I know with the 200 series, the board was in charge of taking care of those procedures stuff. This is a new series. So are those procedures are being developed? No? Or
that would be, okay. I would assume that would be administration.
It would have, so that which gets to my point here is that we need to be cognizant that as we are introducing new policies, that we're affording administration or whoever's in charge of drafting those procedures. And a lot of it, honestly, if you're just adopting MSBA model policies, you could pull it right out of there. But there are going to be some nuances as we've seen in past policies. So that is something that I guess I would recommend for the future board is that, making sure those procedures are in place, if not by the time these policies are adopted, at least shortly after. That's all.
Thank you. And
sorry.
We did pull the procedures out of the policies, so they're not actually going through the policies.
This is on a broad scoping statement, and it applies in my mind to all of the 300 series. I have personally really strong reservations about adding the 300 series, partly to the point that Director Mall made, which is I think the administrative workload is high, especially if you're pulling procedures and you're asking administrators to develop them. I think it's taking time off of work that's student-focused, and a number of the procedures and this work we have done successfully, be it superintendent evaluation, superintendent selection. Their codes of conduct are licensure related. I think it's a problem in search, or it's a solution in search of a problem, and I'm not sure that it's a place where this fits on the scope of work. I think I raised that previously when we talked about whether this is a goal for 300 series, and that's just my opinion across the board on this.
Okay, any other questions?
I just had a question for policies 303 and 304. They have to do with the superintendent selection and the contracts and the contract and evaluation. To me, the procedures around this are board work and not necessarily administration work. So I was just wondering if the policy committee is considered moving those somehow into the procedure pieces anyway, somehow into the 200 series.
We haven't discussed that, but that would be a topic for the committee to discuss at the next committee meeting. So I will definitely bring that forward during the next committee meeting.
Thank you. The only other one, where was it? Sorry. Oh, the only other one I was recommending is that we would define for policy 306, which is the Administrator Code of Ethics, defining administrator per Minnesota statute. That was the only other recommendation I had.
Thank you, and I will also bring that back to the policy committee. So go ahead, Mark.
Just as a member of the policy committee, I want to comment that, I appreciate your comments and respect that we don't want to increase the burden on our administrative team. In as much as that's a possibility, I think that this is more about increasing transparency and increasing clarity of expectation. It's not really increasing the amount of work that those persons would be doing. It just clarifies the difference between the school board and the administrative team and the superintendent and other administrators. And I think that this is an important series of policies to consider. So I do appreciate your comment, but I don't know that it's a lot more work. I think that the clarity and the focus on expectation is helpful for the organization. Thank you.
Yeah, and I can respect that. I appreciate that this is moving forward, and I just feel like we're becoming a little policy and procedure bound, and I worry that from a board and district perspective is limiting, and I have that as an overarching concern, and I certainly have it with specifics with regard to this series, but I'm confident that my voice has been heard and considered.
Thank you. So if nobody's got any further questions, I'm not going to go any further into detail in the 300 series. Everybody's had a chance to review them for a couple weeks now. I'll move along to 401, which is equal employment opportunity. The updates were made. With legal references and cross references. Otherwise, the policy remained the same. Does anybody got any questions about 401?
If I may comment, I want to just comment that here again, the changes to the policies that are in the 400s came from recommendations from MSBA, and the ones that it's just time for us to look at and we're changing. I would describe our changes as making sure that they're in alignment to current practice. So herein, we're not asking for anything new. We're just clarifying the expectation based on what we currently do.
Absolutely. And I will not go through all of the 400 series unless anybody's got specific questions, since they're our first read. Does anybody got specific questions about 400 series policies that are up for first reading tonight? Awesome. Okay, so then we're going to roll right into second readings. There were a couple recommendations for policy 413, harassment and violence. Section 3.3 added definitions for gender identity, and section 3.4 added definition of gender expression. State and federal law require that policy 413 is specific to the protected classes. Extensive time was spent between Director Moen and legal crafting and reviewing this policy previously, and so the committee didn't recommend any major changes. We recommended maintaining the policy so that it stayed in alignment with the other 400 series policies that they had worked on. Does anybody have questions?
I just have a request. If we have to have a standalone policy for harassment and violence against specifically protected classes, I would like to recommend that we consider creating a new policy for harassment of any other types. And I'm saying this because, frankly, cancel culture is alive and well in this world of ours, and a lot of it has to do with political viewpoints. And I just want to make sure that we have an environment where our employees feel that they are 100% assured that they will be free from any kind of harassment.
Thank you very much for your comment, and that'll get brought back to the policy committee in the next meeting. Any other questions? So then we're going to move to 416. We deleted all references to the attachments, drug and alcohol and cannabis testing. The policy committee deleted all references to the attachments since there are no attachments to this policy. And there was one section added in Section 3. At this time, the Hastings Public Schools currently contracts with the Hastings Bus Company, and we just thought that was a little bit of a clarifying statement, since there was a lot of
That's very similar to the conversation we had at 917. The vast majority of that policy is referencing drivers.
Yeah, absolutely. So 507, corporal punishment and prone restraints, we added Section 4C, and we just added that from actually further down in the policy. So,
and this is the piece that was coordinated with the Hastings Police
absolutely.
Department. Okay.
Yep. So does anybody got any questions about 507? Okay, we're moving right. Oh.
Was this one that we were going to expedite?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to.
Can I? Is it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Can I make a motion to move this to an action item?
I think it's in the consent agenda. It's currently in the consent agenda.
It is. Okay. I just didn't know if we needed to do an action.
Yeah, I think based on the recommendation from the committee, it was put in as the consent agenda.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And so 601, school district curriculum and instructional goals. There was a request for the committee to consider adding ACT scores to performance measures. The committee discussed that not all students complete an ACT or SAT, so that those scores might not give an accurate view of the district's performance. Were there any other questions, requests for 601?
I guess I do have a question on that because it's my understanding anyway that not everyone takes the MCAs either. So why, so I'll just back up a little bit. I think it's important to have metrics and the ability to compare to nationally normed type testing and whatnot, so that you don't just have your internal metrics with your internal view, to make sure that you're looking outside. So I'm just questioning why, when, in my view, I mean, I assume that a much higher percentage of students take the MCAs than the ACTs, for example, but why wouldn't we want to use that as some sort of a benchmark?
Are you talking about the
ACT?
No.
Yeah.
Are you referring to the opt-out, or just that's not at every grade level with the MCA?
Sorry, just the in the performance measures piece. That was where we had talked about possibly adding in ACT scores as a performance measure that we review.
But in comparison to the MCAs, are you referring to grade levels that don't, or the opt-outs?
I'm just saying opt-outs. I'm saying I assume, so the argument is that not every student takes the ACTs, but I understand not every student takes the MCAs either. So I'm just wondering what the difference is between those two, why we would have MCAs included and ACTs not included.
I think the committee can talk about that again, but really the MCAs are the required test in Minnesota that we're expected to, and the opt-out has now become an option.
I will also speak to the point that the ACT and the SAT both have been shown to have bias, and they do not accurately capture across race in particular and across socioeconomic status. They are a bias test, and you see that in that many colleges are dropping ACT requirements because they're false barriers, and they just don't take them anymore, and they're false tests. So I would hate to see us add something to our list that's not an accurate measure and is falling out of favor in the higher education.
And I can speak to as to why the MCAs are on there. That's actually required in statute for this policy. But this is a second reading, so this will come back to the policy committee again for discussion.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Policy 620, credit for learning. There were no additional recommendations or requests. Third reading policies. Should we do the 213, or do we wait until the? Okay.
We have action items.
Yep. So unless anybody's got any comments, questions, or requests about any of the third readings, other than the ones that have already been pulled out of the consent agenda for individual action items, speak now. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and roll right on out of policy. Thank you.
Thank you. I would say that we, mostly being you, are getting really smooth at that policy, both the committee summary, not you, Brian, the committee summary, then leading into discussion of the modifications to each. I think we've really hit a nice stride as a board, so I commend you in that. All right, we've made it. We're at the action items. We all knew it was going to come eventually. Our first action item for tonight, let me get my mind set for this, is I would entertain a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda.
So move, Malm.
Second, Dressley.
Motion Malm, second Dressley. Is there any discussion with regard to the consent agenda? Director Tate.
I just want to make sure it's clear, because I don't see it in board book right now, but maybe it's not updated. 213, 215, and 215.1 PR will be not in the consent agenda.
Refresh, because they've been moved. Hit refresh.
Thank you.
I had to do the same thing.
Yep, they're out. Okay, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion on the table of the consent agenda signify by saying aye. 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 Pose same sign. The motion carries unanimously. Our first item for individual action is policy 213. I'm going to entertain a motion in a second, and then the discussion maybe makes the revision. I'm just thinking procedurally. To get to discussion, we have to have a motion on the table.
So move, Mom.
Second, Zuzek.
All right. Motion Malm, second Zuzek to consider policy 213. Is there discussion?
I would like to request that in section 2C, we remove the word resolution and replace it with direction. We've taken this out of the procedure that has already been approved by the board, and since it's not a current practice, I think board direction is a better term for it instead of board resolution, because we're not using resolutions for committee formation. So
yeah, I think we'd had a little conversation about that with regard to the student school board member piece, and I think there is a range of understanding what the word resolution can mean. I don't want it to be approval, because this could just be a conversation at a work session where there's clear consensus, and that would be direction. So that's the intent of that change. This is a single word change, and I think we would still be in a position to approve this. Yep. Is there any further discussion with this regard, considering that modification? Okay. Hearing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. All right. I do see in the next action item is policy 215, addressing school board. I'm glancing ahead, and I see that 215.1 PR was given its own action item. I would like to remind everyone, we are not going to take action item on 1 PR. Those are procedures, so that'll be embedded in this discussion, and I'm sure it'll get cleaned up in the minutes and get addressed in that. So with that, I would entertain a motion in a second to consider policy 215, addressing school board member violations.
I would actually like to move to table these two items until the next meeting.
Hearing no second, the motion dies for lack of second.
That is what we're doing. Yes, I will second
there's a
it.
motion on the table.
So we can go ahead and.
All right, so we have a motion to table 215, and then with that, the associated procedure. Is there any discussion?
Yes, I had vocalized previously my concern over the possibility of this specifically being potentially weaponized over I'll say minimal type infractions. And frankly, with what happened in Elk River with the censure of 2 board members last week in what I would say are minimal and not anywhere close to what should require a censure, I'd like to request that the future board have a discussion over this for that reason. And also, I think that with that going on and this board effectively exiting, I don't feel it's appropriate that this current board make a decision that is that significant on how the next board operates. I feel that there needs to be a robust conversation, and I think that this needs to somehow get down to more or less malfeasance issues versus smaller concerns. I'll say it that way.
Is there any further discussion?
So 215 PR or 215.1 PR, it's a procedure, so that can be changed by general board consensus at a work session or or regular meeting. So I just wanted to point that out. It's not going to, based on a vote tonight, it's not going to be permanently embedded into policy by any means. It's a procedure, so it can be changed at any time by any board member.
Thank you for voicing your opinion. I believe that 215, with the edits that have been made to it, it should be approved tonight. And to Director Dressley's point, the procedures can be addressed with the future board. That's the heart of what is going to happen. It'll be directed by the chair. 215, the policy with the purpose and the statement is saying that, yes, should there be something egregious that needs to be addressed, this is what we do, right? And that we hold ourselves to a higher standard in that regards.
Is there any further comment? I'm just seeing if anybody who hasn't spoken already cares to speak. Director Zuzek?
Thank you. I think that there might be a further change to 213 that I don't see in the one that is represented herein. And so I went back to the policy committee document, and I'm looking for 213 PR. The reason is...
Do you mean 215?
215
okay,
PR, yeah. Pardon me. The reason was, I think what we did is we took that language set at the bottom of the policy and moved it up between step 1 and the additional steps.
It's in between step 2 and 3.
Thank you. What I'm looking at on board book looks different from that.
It is different.
I just, because we heard deeply the concern, Director Tate, that you mentioned, and really wanted to make sure that we were clear that this is for egregious behaviors, malfeasance, if you will, and not for procedural error or viewpoint discretion, but for really either significant violation or ongoing violation. And so, Director Dressley, is my recollection correct?
It absolutely is, and I'm sorry I didn't look at the policy and as it was.
I was going to say I reviewed what was in the to be shared documents.
I think that might have been where it was. That in the to be shared documents, it might have been in there. Okay. But I appreciate what you're saying, and I think we took another pretty big step to clarify that this is only for very significant violations.
There we go.
Pardon me. So I'm not sure what to do other than to say that 215 1 PR, as I think we ended the policy meeting, looks a little bit different. And if we can get that up, that would be great.
Director Davis.
We had a couple of things. So 215 PR 1, first of all, again, per previous comments, the procedural pieces would be cleaned up in a work session. I don't know if it's something for us to debate now. The second thing is that I don't know that I necessarily completely agree with Director Tate, but I will say this. We can go around this for 3 hours tonight, and the new board can come in and completely deconstruct it and do it again anyway. So we might as well let them go after it when they take their seats rather than us spinning our wheels on something that could be completely undone in less than a month. I mean, what's the point? Why not kick it down? Why not let them do it?
So 215 exists right now.
I understand that.
It exists right now. And it's the work that's been done to this point puts it in a clearer spot. And I mean, that's a logic that could be used for why would we do anything post-election. And I just refuse to believe in not working up until the last day of our term. I think there's been good work given to listen. I think if you go into the document that was shared as in anticipation of the meeting, because I think a number of us made the mistake of reviewing that one, and that's the one that's being brought forward and recommended. So we're going to get that up on the screen. So that's my response to that, Director Mullen.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that 215.1 PR, the one that we've all looked at over the last few weeks, that it does reflect in number 2 that most board issues and situations are intended to fall into category 1, and that 3, 4, and 5 are intended for extreme situations. But one thing that we've talked about with this particular policy with 215 is that a conversation can go a long way. It can ensure that conflicts are resolved. So that would be step 1, right? Just a simple conversation. Anything after that requires legal per the procedures, right? So again, I feel like this kind of ties in with like the code of ethics. And this is really stupid and should not weigh, but I'm going to say it anyway. This actually puts a pretty bow on our 200 series policies for 2023. Just saying.
Director Tate.
So I'm going to add one more thing. My concern with policy 215 is that it says a board member's violation of policy, procedure, or law. 100% agree with law, and because that is typically tied to your requirements as a board member. But again, looking at what happened with Elk River, for example, one of the things that was noted was that one of the board members was late occasionally for meetings. Now, while that is not in law anywhere, I guarantee it. It is a courtesy, of course, to be on time to meetings, to attend meetings and all that kind of thing. But I don't see that as a cause for disciplining an elected official, frankly. I mean, we all know life happens, right? And another thing that they invoked there was that one of the board members self-admitted in one meeting that he was unprepared. And what he meant by unprepared was he did not get through the 30 policies that they had to review with his level of scrutiny. He read through all the policies, but he is someone who goes through and he admitted that he reads all of the statutes, he checks all the references, he does the absolute detail work, but he was punished for not being prepared. So this is where my concern is. If we are going, and leaving it like it is right now, the policy, it leaves it open to that type of interpretation, which I want to eliminate completely. I think, frankly, we're elected officials, and to come up with ways of punishing each other for, again, I look back at policy 209, and that is subjective. There are some very subjective things in there, and I don't want to see that happen here. And I think that, like I said, I think that this needs to be rewritten a bit to get to ultimately everything has to be tied to some sort of malfeasance. It has to be a very strong definition of what qualifies for disciplinary action.
So I would like to point out that none of us saw the report that was provided to the Elk River school board members. We don't know the extent. We know what was spoken of in the meeting, and that was the end of it. So I don't want to speak to what did or didn't happen there. I will point out that this conversation about what is, when a policy is passed, it's the equivalent of law for the school district. Policy 209, the code of ethics, is in place, and if we can't speak to holding ourselves personally accountable, and in turn serving the district with accountability, which is what, in my estimation, 215 is about. 215 is not about punishing. It's not about weaponizing. It's about saying we are going to be responsible to the work of the school board, and 209 speaks to how that's going to exist. And so I feel very comfortable with the work that's been done to this point. I think the clarifications have made this policy stronger. I think additional clarifications in the future will continue to make it stronger. But I do not support the motion on the table. Sorry, audible pause. I have nothing to say beyond that. Is there any further discussion with regard to the motion on the table? Director Dressley.
So even with the work we've put into this as a committee, I mean, I can't speak for the others on the committee, but I don't think it's inappropriate to have the new board consider this policy as well.
Is there any further comment? Hearing none, I'm going to call for a vote on the motion on the table. The motion was Tate, second was Dressley, and it's to table 215 and the associated 215.1R. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion carries. Yep. Our next item for individual action is the 2023 payable 2024 levy. Do I have the years right, Director Subert? Okay. 2023 payable 2024 levy. I would entertain a motion in a second at this time to pay that levy.
So moved. Beisel.
Second, Dressley.
Motion Beisel's. Second Dressley. Is there any discussion? All those in favor I'm sorry.
Can I just say that you guys did an amazing job, Jen, but that's all I wanted to say. No other comments.
All right, is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. Our final action item for tonight is a motion to approve the revised budget for 23-24. I would entertain a motion in a second to approve the revised budget.
Motion Zuzik.
Second, Dressley.
Is there any discussion? We have a motion second, a motion Zuzik, second Dressley. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Our next item is future meetings. Actually, I didn't even open up the link right now. We have one future meeting. Well, we have two. We have a closed session following this tonight yet, and then we have the organizational meeting on the 3rd of January. I believe the start time is 6 o'clock here in the Middle School Media Center. That will then be followed by a work session that night, as I understand it.
Which one?
The 3rd?
Nope. It's on the 10th.
Okay, the work session will be on the 10th. Thank you.
That's the reach.
Okay, so we have an organizational meeting on the 3rd, work session on the 10th. At this time, I am not aware of what the topics will be for upcoming work sessions and board topics, so we're not able to give that forward-looking view that we've had in the past. And with that, is there anything anybody has to add for the good of the table? Director.
So I wanted to say thank you to all four of you for your service. You guys have been awesome fellow board members, and I appreciate everything you guys have done in getting us to where we're at as a board today, so thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask remaining board members to sit back and let somebody else make a motion. No, you don't get to do it, Travis. You get to do some motions later. I'll entertain a motion in a second to adjourn.
So moved, Davis.
Second, Beisel.
Well, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously. The motion was Davis, second Beisel. All right. Thank you. We're going to be moving to a closed session so please stop for a bio break and put away your